Back to it. All right, Eddie said, you're on. After school, the kids ordered more doodle gum shakes at Burger Doodle. Scout made them their shakes, but she never smiled at them. Just like the first time, Scout made a sundae for herself, complete with a blood red topping. She slurped it up, dribbling red liquid down her chin. Let's get this over with, Eddie griped. I want to play. What about our spelling homework? Howie asked. Shouldn't you do that first? I should, Eddie said with a smile, but I'm not going to. Liza rolled her eyes and took a sip of her shake. Eddie made a loud slurping noise as he drained his cup dry. Then he burped and folded his arms in front of his chest. That's gross, Liza told him. Eddie pointed to Scout. I'm not half as gross as her. The kids looked at Scout. Her bowl covered her face, and she licked it with her tongue to get the last of the red topping. I wonder what that red stuff is, Melody said. Haven't you people ever heard of strawberry syrup? Eddie asked. Eliza frowned. That doesn't look like strawberry syrup to me. But, Howie said, pointing out the window, that definitely looks like trouble. The kids pressed their noses against the window. Mrs. Jeepers was heading straight toward them, and she wasn't smiling. Let's get out of here, Liza squealed. She's probably going to get us because we're not working on our spelling. She's already at the door, Howie said. There's got to be a back door out of here, Melody suggested. Eddie nodded. It's right behind Scout. Oh no, Liza moaned. We're trapped. There's only one thing to do, Melody said, grabbing her backpack. What? Howie asked. Spelling, Melody said, pulling her spelling book out of her backpack and opening it. I knew I should have played soccer, Eddie said, but he pulled his spelling book out along with Howie and Liza. All four kids had their noses in their books when Mrs. Jeepers swept into the restaurant. Mrs. Jeepers didn't even look at the kids. She rushed over to Scout, handed her a small green notebook. Scout stared straight ahead, not even smiling. Then, without a sound, Mrs. Jeepers quickly turned and hurried out the door. Thank goodness, Eddie said. I only had to answer one question. That was strange, Melody said. Mrs. Jeepers acted like we weren't even here. She must have been in a hurry, Liza said. Don't you think it's strange that Mrs. Jeepers knows Scout? Howie asked. We live in a city the size of a shoebox, Eddie said, smashing his cup with his fist. Why wouldn't Mrs. Jeepers know Scout? Howie ignored Eddie. Maybe Mrs. Jeepers knows Scout because Scout is her spy. Mrs. Jeepers doesn't need a spy, Melody said. She already knows everything about Bailey City. Scout said she works for a family, Liza said with a gulp. Maybe it's a whole family of vampires. Eddie laughed and tossed his cup toward the trash can. It sailed in without even touching the rim. All right, Eddie cheered. 2 points. Then he looked at Liza. Don't tell me you think a whole batty family is going to swoop into Bailey City as soon as a ghoulish spy finds them a nest. That's it, Howie shouted. Mrs. Jeepers is bringing more vampires to Bailey City. Eddie rolled his eyes. That's a bunch of bat poop. After all, ghouls don't scoop ice cream. Or do they? Liza said, staring at Scout. I'll find out if she's really a ghoul, Eddie said, jumping up from his chair. Scout walked into the back room, and Eddie headed straight to the ice cream counter. Melody grabbed his arm. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to drink some of that strawberry syrup, Eddie said. Then I'll know for sure that Scout's only a weirdo and not a ghoul. Liza gasped. What if that's not strawberry syrup? She whispered nervously, looking to see if Scout had come out yet. What if it's blood? Yuck, Melody said. You'd be drinking real blood. Eddie's face went a little pale, but he acted tough. So what, he said. My dad had a drink one time called a Bloody Mary. I'll just have a Bloody Scout. A Bloody Mary is made from tomato juice, Howie explained. It's not made from real blood. Eddie rolled his eyes. I knew that, he said. I was just kidding around. Scout will be back any minute, Liza hissed. Please sit down. Eddie shook his head. I've done enough sitting. It's time for action. Eddie ran over to the counter and slid behind it. He had a big spoon in his hand when Scout came out. What are you doing? Scout asked. Her pale skin and red eyes made Eddie wish he'd never heard of ghouls. Eddie was scared, but he never let on. I wanted to ask you a question, Eddie said.